Hello, I'm Dr. John Harding. I'd like to welcome you to our program, Raising Children with God. We have as our topic for this program, adoption. And our guests are Mary and Stefan Verdi, who I've known for a few years, mostly through their daughter, Stephanie. And we're going to have them, I'm the amateur here tonight, and they're the experts, and they're going to really share with us tonight what they've learned about the process before and now. They've had nearly 3 years of experience as adoptive parents. And my homework for the program involved, the first trip was to Webster's Dictionary to get a definition of adoption, Webster's version. And lo and behold, I found that my 4 years of high school Latin were not all in vain, because the first thing I came across was the Latin ad optare, which means to choose, Webster's definition. Mary will appreciate that. She was a high school math teacher before she went into her present career, which is also Stefan's career. They're in the computer systems field, and that's another area that I have very little knowledge, so they have two areas of expertise. The second definition I came across, which I thought was very, very good, was to take voluntarily a child of other parents and raise as their own child. And I think that says an awful lot, but I think that's just an overview. And what I'd really like is, Mary, if you would begin, so that we don't disappoint Sir Walter Raleigh, if you would begin to just tell us, really, I think your story, what you went through to make the decision and how it all came about and how it has turned out a bit, too.
Okay. Actually, our story begins in 1979, fall of 79. I had just moved into the Worcester area, and a very naive woman came up to me one day and asked me if I was interested in meeting some nice young man that she knew, and it turned out to be her brother, and it turned out to be Stefan. About 10 months later, I think we were married. We met in November of 79, we were married in November of 80. During our, quote, courtship, we had talked a lot about family. We found that we came from similar backgrounds. He was the youngest in a family of 5. I had 3 siblings, and we were close to our families, and family was important to us. And we talked about wanting to have children very early on, and since we were both in our 30s, we didn't feel we had a lot of time to waste. So shortly after we were married in the fall of 80, we started working at it, and nothing happened, and you know, after all those years of being told you have to be careful and whatever, it was kind of interesting.
That you could have 6 children.
Yeah, you could have 6 children if you didn't watch, yes.
We had a similar experience.
Yeah,
My wife
you
and
had
I,
them, yes, you had them. I would say probably 5 years into our relationship, we decided maybe we should talk to someone, and we went through the typical round of testing and heartbreak, month after month, it not working. And the thought of adoption had occurred to me years earlier when I was in my 20s and had not found Mr. Right. And one of my goals, I wanted to be married and I wanted to be a mom. So I had made the decision in my late 20s that if I hit my mid-30s and I was still single, that I was going to look into adoption, because being a mother was very important to me. I wanted to have an impact on a child's life or children. Actually, I figured there were 3 children in my life from somehow. So as we went through this process throughout the 80s, I think adoption was always in the back of my mind, that it was an option for us. And I guess as we got into the late 80s, I think it was probably 87, 88, we came to the realization that we were getting older, and we probably weren't going to be able to have our own biological children. So we had been in contact with Resolve, which is a support group for couples that are experiencing fertility problems. And we had also been in contact with the Open Door Society, ODS, which is an organization that does a lot of work with couples, adoptive families that have adopted and families that want to adopt. So we had gathered a lot of information, and I actually came to the conclusion, because of our ages, that a newborn was probably out of the question, and we started looking into adopting older children, sibling groups. And I remember orphanages from growing up. I remember there was such a thing as an orphanage, so I started looking for orphanages, and there were no such thing.
You know, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second to let you catch your breath.
Yes.
And what I'm going to say is not as good as what you're saying, but just my mother was in an orphanage in Worcester as a child for some years. And you mentioned looking for an older child, that would be the more likely. And just that is such a huge problem now in adoption. All of the older children that maybe over 5 years of age or over 6 years of age that are in the foster home circuit, and they're not as desirable. You know, the quest for the infant, white infant at that, because there are more difficulties in the black infants and children, the older infants and children, the handicapped, the special needs children. And that, you know, that's such a, and you had mentioned that when we had talked before the program about that was your initial intent. And sorry for the interruption now, but I just wanted
We were actually looking for a sibling group. Naively, I think we figured that we could handle up to 3 children overnight.
I would question that now after 3 years of raising the practical
But at that,
approach.
There's always the real and the ideal
that's
and
right.
the fantasy, I suppose.
That's right. So as we did research, we contacted, I think the first place I contacted was the New England Home for Little Wanderers, because we had been told that they had children, and they basically explained the type of children that they had, and it was basically much older children, and we really did want younger children, not teenagers or adolescents. And they directed us to the Department of Social Services, and we basically they indicated that that was where you would find the majority of children's sibling groups that were in need of placement. So we contacted the Worcester office. They referred us to Fitchburg. We got involved in a training program, which was quite extensive. It was probably a 12-week program. We connected with a social worker, wonderful young woman, who got to know us, and basically I think it was over a 3-year period from the time we did training. We had our training that we were just in the queue waiting for an opportunity. We actually were presented with a 6-year-old girl, a little girl, who we brought home, and she was not ready to be adopted. It was very interesting. She did not want to be adopted, and she was subsequently placed with her maternal grandparents in Florida, and they adopted her. But that she wasn't happy with us, and that was pretty devastating for us, that did not work out.
But you know, I heard a story in the office recently. I was talking to a father who's actually a teacher as well, and was in with his son, who's, I guess, maybe about 9 or 10. And one night at supper, they have a boy and a girl, and the son was telling a story. He's kind of an embryo writer, creative young boy. And he said he wanted to tell them a story about his coming to their family. And he said, story begins, I was up in heaven with God, having a great time and quite happy. And one day God came to me and said, you're going to have to be leaving us soon. I'm sending you down to earth. I want you to spend some time down there. And I have 3 families picked out for you, and I'd like you to choose which one. So I said, I looked down through the clouds to earth to see each of these 3 families. And I picked you. You looked like the kind of a mother and father, and I also saw my sister, and I thought that would be nice to have a sister. And that was the story, you know, and I said, whoa.
That's neat.
Isn't it beautiful?
That is a nice story,
It is.
yeah.
That's sort of, we can relate to that to a certain degree. We received Stephanie in June of '92. In November of '91, Mary's dad passed away. And that was a devastating time for not only Mary, but all of us. And somehow, 7 months later, this was just a godsend to us. And we can't help but think of the possible connection between the two. It's a mystery, and it'll always remain a mystery, but there's that possibility of a connection.
Well, you know, the name of our program is Raising Children with God, and sometimes we have gotten so enthused about the topic that I get to almost the very end and I realize that we haven't mentioned God, and I don't really want to upset him with me personally. But you know, my mother died on my birthday, and you know, I've come to learn that we have 3 birthdays. One is our conception day, and the people in the East, the Orient, believe in this and count that as the birthday, the conception day. And then there's the birthday of when we are born into the world through natural childbirth. And then the 3rd birthday is when you die and you're born to your eternal life, everlasting life, as opposed to this little stint we do on earth. If you believe in life after death, and I surely do. And then, you know, in preparing for this program, I kind of thought about, you know, adopted infants and children have a 4th birthday. Not just 3 like us regular people. They are born into a family that wants them very badly. And so they have their conception day, and they have their natural birth into the world. They have the day they're adopted into their new family as a birthday, in a sense, and then the 4th one.
Yeah.
Which, you know, the
Yeah.
special thing about how, you know, you could call it coincidence for sure, but I think if you believe in God, a lot of what is put down as coincidence is really...
It's much more than that.
We're pretty finite in our thinking and pretty ignorant of the plan, the master plan, and I agree that there's something very special, not just coincidence and happenstance. And I still can't quite believe that hot soup created
The earth.
a human being in the earth. You know, it's possible. There's always that one in a zillion. But anyway,
I was just thinking in terms of, you know, we're talking about how devastated we were, and my father's loss was very traumatic for me. I was the only girl, and I was Daddy's little girl, and I idolized my father. And we had kind of put aside any thoughts of family. I mean, we were getting older, and actually I remember having a conversation with my cousin the weekend before Stephanie came into our lives, and I had actually said to her, you know, I guess we just have to move on, that it's just not going to work out. And this was after 12 years. We had been married 12 years before Stephanie came into our life, and that's a long haul.
you're going to get no sympathy from me for getting older, because I just celebrated, I'm not even sure, I
No,
think
we
my
don't wanna talk.
16th or my 17th, 39th birthday.
I know.
recently.
I'm at that point too, or we are both. But it was interesting because one day, out of the blue, I was at work, and 10:30 in the morning, I will never forget the day. Stephanie was born June 10th, and on June 11th at 10:30, I got a phone call from a social worker that we had known. It wasn't our social worker, and she just popped up and said, "Hi, Mary, how you doing?" I said, "Fine." She goes, "I've got a 6-pound, 6-ounce baby girl. Would you like her?" And I'm like, "What? A baby?" We hadn't expected a baby. We had just resigned ourselves. That was not in the picture.
At that point in time.
At any point in time, you know, really, especially at that point in time. And I said, "Okay, fine. Tell me a little bit about her." They told me a little bit about her.
Now,
and
who picked you up off the floor like that?
Well, the funny part is I had a staff meeting at 11 o'clock with the senior vice president of the division that I'm in and the rest of his direct reporters. So these are all officers of the company. And so that was at 11. So at 10:30 I get the phone call. I asked for a little bit of information. I got it. I hung up. I called Steph. I said, "Are you sitting down?" Explained to him the story. And I said, "By the way, they want a name."